My professional experience was undertaken at a co-educational K-12 school in Greater Western Sydney. I taught 4 English classes, including a Year 9 girls class. Across these 4 classes, I taught a number of EALD learners, as well as learners with anxiety disorder and ADHD. An issue that was noted in my midpoint assessment by my mentor teacher was my time management during the lesson. This issue was most pertinent to my Year 9 class, whereby the introduction of the lesson was completed in 25 minutes, as opposed to the 5 minutes I had planned for. This affected the completion of the key worksheet, which, as my mentor teacher noted, should have been the bulk of the lesson. The augmentation of this issue was reflected in the rush nature of the closure, as my mentor teacher noted that there were only 4 minutes at the end of the lesson to complete the exit activity, leading students to not provide an authentic answer, and in turn hinder my ability to assess student learning. This issue relates to my role as an English tutor, as my introductory activities often take too long to be completed, which means that my student and I spend less time focusing on their classwork, which again is the priority. McLeod and others underline the critical role of time management in student achievement and attitudes towards learning. A lesson is successful when the planned introduction, development, and closure is effectively implemented. A lack of consideration for the time allocated to each component of the lesson, in conjunction with my misuse of time, meant that I was unable to effectively meet Australian Professional Standard 4.2, Managed Classroom Activities. The 3M meeting network identified that the average attention span of an individual is 18 minutes. Spending 25 minutes on the introduction of the lesson therefore decreased students' engagement and in turn led to off-task behaviour, because if a teacher does not lead the class, then the students will. My lack of effective classroom communication, in terms of the clarity and pacing of my instruction, was another factor underlying this issue, as it gave rise to unnecessary and repeated questions from students, which continually disrupted the learning flow. As a result, students were not given a fair opportunity to achieve success in the main activity, which was noted by one student on their exit ticket. I needed more time to give an elaborate answer. Therefore, this issue hampered my ability to effectively support student participation and learning in this lesson, which may have decreased students' self-efficacy and increased their level of anxiety. A strategy I utilised to counteract this issue in future lessons was to clearly establish a classroom routine. I used chaining, which involves creating a pattern of behaviours whereby each behaviour in the chain functions as stimulus for the next action. This practice is embodied in the following routine I created at the beginning of each lesson. Number 1, students stand behind their chairs for prayer. Number 2, teacher greets students. Number 3, students sit down. And number 4, teacher instructs students to take out the required materials while marking attendance. To save time, I made my instruction more explicit by attaching a time frame to it. For example, you need to have your workbooks on your desks by the time I finish marking the roll. Thank you. Hattie's study showcases how the quality of explicit instruction has a powerful impact on student achievement. Drawing on Bandura's theory of observational learning, my explicit instruction about classroom procedures and student behaviour, paired with my consistency, promoted students' retention and in turn reproduction of the routine. This routine established good traffic flow in the classroom, which helped initiate students into a state of readiness, reduce opportunities for off-task behaviour, and most importantly, save valuable class time for learning. Additionally, I began establishing challenging learning goals at the beginning of each lesson by writing the daily agenda of tasks on the whiteboard, as recommended by Bongolan. Writing and referring to this agenda throughout the lesson by ticking off tasks as they were completed supported both the pacing of my students and myself. Burden highlights how procedures that inform students about the structure of the lesson and its objectives enables them to learn more in less time and reduces unnecessary questions, which was a factor previously mentioned that contributed to this issue. Another powerful tool I used to manage the timing of classroom activities, as supported by McKay, was to project an online timer onto the whiteboard. This allowed me to respond to my mentor teacher's note to keep the time in mind, while also building students' self-regulatory skills and ensuring transitions were quick and seamless. My mentor teacher's feedback and strategies researched improved my practice, as reflected in my teacher's comment at the end of my placement stating, "Better use of time." Inspired by Denti, I can adopt a behavioural approach to time management in my future practice by rewarding desirable behaviour with the positive in students' diaries. Rewarding adherence to classroom routines, for example, links to the 4th step in Bandura's theory of observational learning, by motivating students to focus on their behaviour, which minimises classroom disruption and wasted time. My critical reflection on my mentor teacher's feedback and exit ticket responses led me to establish routines and procedures to improve my time management skills, ensure smooth transitions between activities, deliver purposeful lessons, and progress students forward in their learning. Adjusting my practice showcases how I understand our students learn, Australian Professional Standard 1.2, as Churchill and others state that routines lead students to feel secure, as they know what is expected of them, reducing their anxiety, developing their self-confidence, and directing their attention towards the assigned task. Therefore, my critical reflection on practice has already and will continue to lead to improved teaching and learning outcomes, as the proposed strategies ensure that large amounts of time are spent on learning, rather than attending to daily chores and behaviour. Here are my references, and thank you so much for listening.